Hey, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Today, April, and Ryan. And
Nice to see everybody dressed warm.
It's cold out there.
I see a down vest, I see a scarf.
Two turtlenecks.
Got a hat on.
Oh,
Yep.
and no snow.
I know. What's up with that?
I don't know. I put
It's-
in a request. I think it's
Good.
the state. I think it's clearly the state government is not responding to our request for snow.
Another letter to the governor.
Another level. Yes.
you don't have to shovel it, though.
I don't have to plow it
There's
either.
other things. Yes.
My snowshoes are getting rusty.
I know. My
You
skis
can
are
still use them, George.
sad.
Just get out there.
Well,
I'll
I've been
ski.
getting out. I haven't let the weather stop me, but
No.
in the long range forecast doesn't I see none. Although they say
Mm-mm.
there's a chance on Saturday.
We're all here. There we go.
Wow.
Hi,
It's
everybody.
all here.
I guess
Hi.
you have to work, huh?
Yeah. There
All
is
right.
that.
Thanks for being so prompt, everybody. You guys noticed the packed agenda tonight, so be good to get going. So I'll call the Finance Committee to order at 6:29, and I think I see Ryan, our treasurer. So
Hello, everyone.
Ryan, we can get started like 15 minutes early with you if you're ready to go now.
I certainly would not complain.
Okay. All right, let's do that. I'm gonna yeah, so our first topic today is to review Ryan's proposed FY26 budget for the treasurer department, and I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see. Gabe, if you're there, I think you might need to give me sharing privileges. I don't know if you stepped away or
I'm sorry, I had a customer in my office.
no problem.
So I was killing two birds with one stone.
All right.
So I will give you host.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. I'm gonna make you co-host because I'm staying on.
Yeah, perfect. All right, and let's see, make sure I pull up the right one. Why am I having trouble finding? Oh, here we are. Yeah. Okay. All right. How are we doing for font size? Is that readable?
Bigger, please.
Bigger. Let's see what I can.
A little bigger.
That's
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
There we go.
all right. Great. Okay, Ryan. So you've done this a few times. Can you kind of just walk us through the line items here? And it looks like, a number of them have essentially are holding the same levels as FY25, but we've got some proposed changes. So maybe we can kind of talk through those.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it is a standard 3% just based on assumption of increased wages, things that tie into that. But there's obviously a couple varying ones here, and the big one we should just get out of the way is the health insurance line.
Yeah.
As you can see here, I put in an estimated increase of 15%, which I think is a jarring number. However, I really do genuinely believe that we'll see an increase in rates somewhere between 12 and 15%. I think it might actually land at 13, but I really wanted to be on the safe side with sending this in. This is, from what I understand, I've tried to get as much The insurance trust hasn't met yet, so they haven't officially voted anything, but I've tried to get as much information ahead of time so that I can come prepared to this meeting. And from my understanding, there's a substantial increase in weight loss drug use. And this has driven up the cost of insurance substantially. And the trust itself has used a large amount of its reserves. And as a result, they expect to see a substantial increase in rates. So that's where this number is coming from. It's not because I thought it would be fun to shock everyone.
Mhm. Okay.
What was the second what was the second thing? The first one was the weight drugs, and the second one was
That they, as a result of that, they've used a lot of their reserves.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And how is this year doing? Are we on schedule this year? Are they using their reserves to meet the Ozempic in FY25?
Well, we did have an increase last year. So when we budgeted for last year, I prepared for that. So we're on track right now with our expenditure on there.
And who's they?
And of course, that always, the insurance trust itself, Hampshire County Group Insurance, our insurance company.
Okay, Hampshire County Insurance. Okay, trust. Thank you.
Hey, Ryan,
Yes.
Bob? go
yeah,
ahead.
I just want to, in FY24, we had 446, 585. Now it's up to, you're asked for 598. Is that reflective of the employees or just general cost, increase in cost in health? Because that's a wallop of an increase.
Yeah, it's substantial. I mean, obviously, this year's over last year's is a huge difference. I don't know, you probably won't recall, but during the pandemic, there were some years where they chose not to. I think it was either either 2 or 3 years in a row where they didn't increase rates at all, which I don't necessarily agree with that decision, and I think that is what's led us to have these larger increases later. I understand the logic behind it. It was to help alleviate the financial burden on people during the difficult time. But coming off the pandemic, health insurance costs have just continued to rise and rise. And you compound that with the fact that they didn't have an increase in rate for those couple of years. We're now seeing it at this end of time, unfortunately. So that's the best I could do to explain it. This is not based on change in staffing, really. It truly is just an increase year over year with the insurance rates.
So it's not based on members, it's not based on staffing, but it's based upon this anomaly because of the COVID. That's your interpretation?
Can I,
My interpretation is a combination of the COVID and this weight loss drug is the real current hit right now. I mean, I'm happy to hear Gabe's point of view. She has substantial more knowledge and insight than I do on this.
Okay, thanks.
can I jump in for
Yeah,
just a
please,
second?
Gabe.
So when you take the 520,000 that was last year's based on the employees that Ryan has and multiply it by the 15% increase they're estimating, it does come out to 598,000. So your employee situation is stagnant, it's staying the same.
Mhm.
The Ozempic problem, they're paying out $500,000 a month in Ozempic alone. That's that's one drug. You're not even talking about all the other drugs out there. And that is a huge increase. The other issue is they have some very, very high claims. If a child is born and it's an ICU and it spends its first 2 years with heart issues, we've got a couple. I'm not saying that that's the situation we have, but they have several huge cases that are costing millions in medical care. And that affects your rates and that affects the increases that Blue Cross, it eats into the reserves. So Ryan was spot on in how he explained it. But the pharmaceuticals are the driving force. We are a country that prescribes drugs for everything. And this weight loss thing is absolutely huge.
Thank you very much for that, Gabe.
One last other question, Ryan, about the further down the page here about the computer visioning. Didn't we have a contract that was going to hold that number? I mean, it seems to be increasing really, really rapidly too.
What are you pointing to? Forgive I'm missing what you're talking about.
Are you, you
Oh,
look
well,
at
maybe I
the
can see the
assessor's
other,
budget.
the other budget. Sorry,
Yeah,
that's the tax collector.
right.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Ryan, I have a question just about sort of timing and process related to the health insurance assumption here. So can you just explain to me kind of what the process, so it sounds like the trust has some process where they essentially vote on setting a rate for an upcoming fiscal year. Is that how it works? And
Yeah, so that meeting takes place at the end of January. So I had initially sent over a budget, I think it was due in October,
okay,
which just I didn't have any close of an insight that really provided, which is why last week I sent you this one and it was so
Okay.
drastically different.
so all right, so that's helpful. So basically, we can put in this number of $598,000 as a placeholder for now, but it sounds like by the end of this month or sometime shortly after that, we'll actually get information about what our actual rate is going to be for FY26.
Yes, we'll have a set
Okay.
increase.
All right, got it. Okay, that's helpful. Susie.
Right, which is the only real oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Brian. If
I was
you
just going to say that's really the only fixed variable in the situation is what the rate is. There's always the chance that, someone will leave the school this year who's not on our plan. They'll hire their replacement and they'll have a family plan. And that alone is a huge increase, and if that happens a couple times over, it's hard for me to factor that into the situation.
But are you going to recommend essentially making the same an assumption that the employee number and the number of the type of plans they're opting into is going to be consistent with FY25, and then
yes.
Okay, got it. So the what will impact the number we actually put in our final budget here is going to be whatever the rate is that the trust proposes for.
Yeah, the only reason why I would change that would be if you for sure you're meeting with the police department and you're giving them a new benefited employee, or you're giving the highway an extra benefited employee. If say you're going to do two of those, I would probably factor in a fair assumption that at least one of them would take insurance, and then I would probably add a little more to this. But if this isn't happening, then there's no point in me trying to assume that there'll be this drastic change in who's taking it or not.
Okay, thank you. And Susie.
And so, because we learn every day, maybe we want to put Ryan after the likely meeting in the future. I mean, we don't really have to spend a lot of angst on this if we meet after the trust votes. So maybe we would put Ryan like in the second week of February or wherever our next.
Yeah.
If you think that's predictable enough, Ryan.
Yeah, that should be fine. Like I said, I have a good relationship with people, so I try to touch base with them ahead of time. So at least we have somewhat of an estimate here, as opposed to me assuming, a couple percent to be like coming back to you in a month with 15 wouldn't be a fun meeting.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we move on to some of the other line items here? Do you want to?
Okay. So just going down, if everyone's okay with just going down the list, I think that's
Perfect.
efficient here. Medicare, this is tied directly to what your wages are. So I'm simply assuming there will be a generalized 3% COLA across the board for wages, and that's how I've budgeted this line. Your OPEB actuarial, we put money away in order to, we don't do the OPEB every year, I believe it's every other year. So we put money away every year towards it. So then when we go to actually do the actuarial review, we have the funds already sitting there. Last time we did it, they mentioned that there would be an increase, which is why it's 2,500 over 2,000. The next line is the actual OPEB contribution. I put in 50,000. Obviously, the finance committee usually, as you navigate the budget process, you make a determination there. It falls under my department's purview, so I feel it's appropriate to add that in there.
Got it.
Short-term borrowing is just the cost associated with doing borrowing itself. So when we go out to bid, when we have to renew a debt, etc., it helps with the cost with working with our financial advisor, etc. The next one that has a larger increase, you'll note, is the tax title account. To be totally transparent with you, I actually think that I could increase this a lot more, and I do think I could benefit from increasing it a lot more, but I'm trying to stay somewhat reasonable here. We've had a lot of activity in our tax title accounts, and there was some time. I'm trying to figure out how to word this, so forgive me for a second. Two major changes to tax title. One, the state itself is changing the way tax title is handled, and it's just making the process, in my opinion, a little more expensive. There will be involvement of real estate agents as trying to dispose of property before you go and just simply sell it at auction like you used to do before. Things like that, that's now actually changing it to make it more costly. The other thing is that there was a time where we had a couple issues with some activity that took place in the assessor's office. I think we had a new admin assessor, and things maybe got a little wonky between the assessor and the collector's office. And as a result, our tax title attorney has had to put a lot of work into a couple projects, and that has just it's eating away at my tax title budget. So the best way to describe it is you have someone in tax title, which means they owe the town taxes. The collector turns it to the treasurer, and then the treasurer works with the tax title attorney to try to recoup those taxes from said individual, which requires filing paperwork at the registry of deeds, going to court, etc. And your tax title attorney handles that. Unfortunately, there were a couple errors with parcels and documentation before it got to the treasurer's side that our tax title attorney has uncovered through this process of trying to collect this money. And the longer an attorney works on something, the more expensive it is. So it truly is, it's really that simple. It's a direct relation to the amount of hours being put into it. So along with the couple little clerical errors historically that have taken place, and now with this new tax law and the effort that's going to take on the tax attorney's side, is just going to cost us more money to try to recoup from those people who are not paying their taxes in town. So that's why there's the increase here.
That issue regarding the error, that was a current fiscal year issue, not necessarily something that's going to happen in 26.
You'd be surprised how long it takes a court to move.
So you think that the costs associated with that are going to spill into the next year?
Yeah, right now, our tax attorney, I actually told him to stop working on it because I'm going to completely expend that budget without a doubt if he continues to work on it, and we're not accomplishing anything but that one project. So right now, there's a good amount of it that's under the court's purview, which actually takes a lot of time. So I've asked him to basically stop doing anything for a little bit, because every time he does, not just him, but anytime the attorney does anything, it costs a ton of money. So even if he's like just checking in on it, it's costing us a ton of money. So I've asked him to stop, let the court move a little, and then we'll revisit it in a couple months rather than this continuous effort being put towards it, because my budget simply can't support it.
Yeah, I noticed that you're pretty heavily spent on that line already.
Yep.
For the year.
Yes.
You're at 79% spent.
Yep.
Yes, that's why he's on pause.
Yeah.
Susie?
And the good news is that if you get it over the finish line, there will be more tax dollars paid into the town. So it's not like some projects where there's no benefit back.
Yes, it is one of those few that there's a financial benefit to the town in the end. It's just it's the frustrating of costing some taxpayers money to get other taxpayers to pay their taxes. But unfortunately, it's the process.
Mm-hmm.
Moving right along.
Yep.
To the treasurer's expenses, I have a 3% increase in here, which is putting us at around $350 or so in that treasurer's expense line, which is I'm basically gonna take a little bit of, I'm gonna try to cut back a little to offset an increase in my line of actually $500 with our payroll company. But I'm trying to work with our payroll company to create this new onboarding process where all of our new hire paperwork will get sent electronically, and they'll be able to complete everything electronically. It automatically gets imported to our payroll software. It's saved there. That is actually a pretty decent expense. However, because I represent so many towns with them, they're willing to break up the expense by town rather than what it would normally cost, because so much of my paperwork is the same. So there will be a change in service that hopefully will be really smooth and help the town with its audits in the future and just overall personnel happiness at a really nominal increase in the budget. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Bob?
I was going to ask you about the next line, veterans benefits. I know we had some issues
Okay.
with that line this year. I
Mhm.
think we actually had to augment it or supplement it. Where does that stand? Where did that line stand this year and going forward?
We are pretty much on the same. We're on the same trajectory there. If I understand this, and this actually, I'm happy to take advantage of Gabe's work with the town at the moment, because the veterans benefit is one that there were years where we didn't have one, and those were my formative years in the role. So we do have a veteran living in town right now where we are paying this out, but I was always under the impression that we were reimbursed. So maybe I just don't quite understand it, and I'm hoping that Gabe could shed some light on it, because we are on track right now. We do have a veteran living in town. We are on track to overextend that budget at the
Right.
moment.
So you only have one veteran, and their benefits are based on what their earning potential is. So if they're a lawyer, their benefits are going to be on the level of a lawyer's salary. They take their salary. If they're a truck driver, their benefits are based on that. Their benefits are based on their situation, if they're collecting unemployment or whatever. So usually when you get a vet, he cannot collect anything. And the Veterans Administration works with him. He gets full benefits in the beginning and then gradually it gets reduced. So the vet you have started out at a very high rate, and currently monthly is at a low rate. And when I came to you to tell you we were in trouble on this account, Gail and I projected this one person to June when we asked to get that supplemented. So we are reimbursed 75% from the state of Massachusetts. It usually doesn't come in till it's 2 years down the road. So what we pay out this year, we don't get. Sometimes we get it next year, sometimes we don't. It depends upon how the state rolls with it. So, but you may be getting income now you probably aren't, because you haven't had a vet for years. So you've already gotten reimbursed for past years. You're not going to get reimbursed for this person for a little while. But it comes in your cash revenue side. It does not come in it doesn't come in and get helped. It doesn't really help you. It comes back to
Right.
you in your revenue side.
Right.
So when you do your recap sheet, if you're estimating a refund from the vets, you can put it in there to help you recoup some of that money. But if you get anybody that moves into town that's a vet that is unemployed and has a situation, automatically gets benefits. So Ryan has no way of predicting that. Tomorrow he could have a whole family move into town, and then he would have another vet that he would have to pay out on a monthly basis. So this is really what I call what do you call that when you look into a glass ball and you try to predict the future?
Good.
Roll of
You
the
can't-
dice.
Yeah, it's a roll of the dice.
I think the
You're
term is budgeting.
Yeah. You're lucky you only have one. I have seen them be as much as $3,000 a month with one person.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm very grateful Gabe is here. So yeah, no, I actually just before this meeting filled out another voucher for this individual. You're looking at just shy of $1,500 for the month of January for them. So I know that line is going to be, it's going to be shot. So I'm happy to see the line increase. It's hard to predict. I mean, if you were to do quick math on this one, you'd be looking at a substantial increase in the budget there, but I don't know how long they will be here and how long they'll receive benefits.
But right now, that person is being compensated at about $1,500 a month. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Okay.
Now, it sounded like Gabe, you suggested that number will decrease over time, but is that a pretty gradual kind of process, or?
Right. if they get rent aid for him, or they get oil fuel for him, right now the veterans' money that's being paid is a composite of a lot of credits for oil, fuel, rent, whatever his expenses are. He or her has to bring the expenses in. So say they get into subsidized housing, then the benefits get reduced. That's how that works. If he doesn't, they stay the same until he's off. If he suddenly
That makes
gets
sense.
Social Security, they will reduce it.
AJ,
Yeah, go ahead. Is that
I'm
George?
sorry to interrupt. My React isn't working. I can't raise my hand.
Oh,
So we can't assume that assistance is going to happen, right? I mean, we have to assume that this person's getting 1,500 a month,
Right.
that's probably going to continue.
Right.
Well, I would like to, the 1,500 I thought was high because I don't recall it being this high. So I did just go back and look. It hasn't been that high. It's only been near that twice now. But Gabe's point makes sense. If it's helping covering the cost of heating, et cetera, that the varying for this month is going to be on the higher side. So it hasn't been 1,500 consistently.
How long has this person been receiving this benefit? Is it?
Looks like they lived here a few years ago and then left, and now they're back. Came back in 24 in March, it looks like.
Okay.
Or maybe not to say they didn't live here, but they haven't been being paid regularly until 2024.
I mean, assuming that, from March through, I don't know what the most recent month you've processed. I don't know if that was December or some earlier month. Like, could you do kind of a back of the envelope sort of estimate of what you think this person is going to be compensated over the course of a year?
$18,000 if it's $1,500 a month.
Yeah,
Right. But I thought Ryan said that some months were like we only hit that 1,500 a couple
Right.
of months. Yeah.
Through December, the spending was 6,500. I'm looking at the expense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that might be March through December. Yeah.
Yeah, so 13 to 15,000.
Well, that's
probably
probably
appropriate.
June through
July.
December. June through December. Because March through
Yeah,
June would have been
of course.
last year's.
Of
fiscal
course.
year.
Of course. Yeah. All right. I don't know what others think, but it sounds to me like we probably ought to budget something higher than this $5,500 here, just knowing that this is not really I know we've had this discussion in the past, and it's been more of a speculative kind of discussion about like, well, what if somebody moves into town? But we have somebody here right now who's getting this benefit, and so we know that unless this person were to leave tomorrow or whatever, like that we're gonna be spending more than $5,500. So it sounds like
Yeah.
some increase is warranted here. That's my gut reaction. I don't know what others think. Susie?
So if we go with 11, if we take those first 6 months and divide it out, it's about 1,100. So if we do that times 12 for next year, we'd be at 13,020. I mean 13,200. So 5,000 looks pretty inadequate.
Yeah.
Totally
Yeah,
is.
I'm sorry. This is my first experience with it, so forgive my
No, it's not your
my
fault.
ignorance on it.
No, I remember like we had a run of like several
Since
consecutive
I've been
years
here,
where we
I've
had
always
zero.
just said if someone moves to town, we'll have to
Right.
pay for them.
Yeah.
And that's been my spiel for this line.
Yeah, we've always pushed back on that, as a matter of fact. Well, we have our FinCom reserve, so we always felt like if it changed, we could cover ourselves for at least 1 year, but this looks like something that could go longer.
Yeah. Bob?
I want to suggest that because of all the unpredictables that Gabe and Ryan have pointed out, that I think we could probably be safe or safer if we committed about 10,000 in this budget, and then we could always supplement it if we had to. But that would be a significant increase to cover these possibilities. I think that might work for me.
Okay. So you're suggesting maybe budgeting $10,000 for FY26. April?
Actually, I was thinking along the same line, but I was thinking of just doubling the 5,500 with the idea that we could use reserve funds if we needed.
Okay, so that would be something closer to like 11,000.
Right.
Oh, yeah, call it 12.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously we don't have to make a decision on this tonight, but it would be helpful to have sort of a different placeholder in here. I haven't heard anybody from the FinCom sort of push back against the idea of increasing this by a pretty significant margin. So I don't know. What do you think? Should we call it 1,100, 1,200? Sorry, 11,000, 12,000, something like that? Does that seem reasonable to folks?
Yeah, April's idea makes sense.
Okay. All right. So maybe I'm gonna just put in 11,000 just to make it a nice, easy round number. How's that sound? Good? Okay. All right. Ryan, was there any other kind of background that you wanted to share on the next line or any other lines that we've already talked about?
No, unemployment. The only thing is I just did a quick calculation as to what we would have paid out if we just paid into the state. We probably would have paid around $3,200 to $3,300 last year directly to the state, and we didn't expend that much here. And continuing to fund it this way, I think, does make sense for Shutesbury.
Okay. Great. Okay. Any questions? I see we have a question or hand up from a member of the public before I get to that person. Do FinCom members, any other FinCom members have questions or need any clarification from Ryan?
Thank you.
Yes, I do have a question for Ryan.
All right, George?
So Ryan, at some point, so we've approved 3 projects and we funded them with short-term notes because interest rates were high. And I believe that's the advice you received from our bond counsel or whoever.
Yes.
And so those are coming up and the finance committee are going to be interested in what decisions you're going to make. And I don't know, maybe we even want to be involved in those decisions because we're planning on having capital planning meetings and looking at what's coming up down the road. Historically, we look at our cash reserves, our current debt service, and we try to figure out what's the best way to finance the current requests, the requests that will happen at the town meeting this spring. But these are 3 wild cards right now for us because we don't know what the plan is. And so I don't know, I might be speaking for the whole FinCom, but I would recommend, if you don't mind, if it's appropriate for us to be involved in that decision making, just so that we're aware of what recommendations we can make when we write warrant articles for the new ATM. Because
Yeah.
just to finish that, you understand our concept. What we've been doing is funding capital stabilization to the tune of 2% of the budget and decreasing from that funding any amount that's in debt service. So essentially, we're always funding capital purchases in the operating budget at 2%.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We do have the 3. We did a ban, which is a 1-year borrowing for the, I think it was a culvert, dump truck, maybe a backhoe, some type of equipment for the highway department. Yeah. I did have a chance to touch base with our financial advisor just recently because there was, we had an inauguration a couple of days ago. So that usually changes things and what they're looking at. It's possible that we'll probably renew for another year to get an idea as to what rates are going to look like, but it's still too soon to really have an idea on that. So I'm happy to keep you in the loop in that, keep you involved in the process as we get closer to that coming due and deciding whether we're going to go out to borrow for another ban, which is basically a renewal, or going out for a longer term. It really depends on what happens with our rate market.
Right, and unfortunately it's not moving the way we all hoped it would. Would that mean that you might need to increase the short-term borrowing interest on this schedule?
It is.
If the rates would have to be, it's possible because rates could be going.
The 3 of them
the
combined
opposite
were
direction.
about $500,000.
Yeah, it's like 546,000. So depending on what happens with rates, it is possible it could become more expensive.
Okay, but we'll figure that out later. Thank you.
Uh,
Of course.
Jim?
Yes, Ryan, concerning tax title, I have a question. How many
Yeah.
delinquent taxpayers do we have? Or are you wrestling with right now?
Wrestling with is a unique term. I will say I'm not necessarily wrestling with anyone. You know, people are communicative for the most part, those that are interested. I'm just looking for my list here.
Yeah, I think we ask this question most every year. I'm just curious to know whether there was more people than normal or less than normal, I guess is what I'm sort of trying to find out.
For the no, we're pretty consistent. We've got about 15, it looks like, in there, and it's been pretty much that same ballpark for the last few years.
Okay,
It was right before, honestly, coming off the pandemic, I think, is when you notice there was an increase, and that increase has stayed consistent since.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Gabe?
In Ryan's budget sheets, I don't see his treasurer certification. So Ryan just passed his testing. So he's now a registered treasurer, and we have a $1,000 stipend that we give them. And that needs to be added to this budget.
It does. Thank you. When I completed this, I didn't.
It's
take
not
that
on
into
your,
consideration.
yeah, it's not on your budget here, but on page 1 of your expense report, it looks like it got removed and we need to add it back in.
Congratulations, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I'm happy to have completed that.
So maybe I'll add a line under treasurer expenses.
No, if
No?
you go on your expense, well, unless you
It
took
already
it out of your
exists.
spreadsheet,
already
it already
exists.
exists.
Yeah, it's already there.
Okay.
And we've
is
been
it-
funding it at 0.
Yep,
Oh, I see. Okay, so there's actually a separate line on our
Yep.
budget, apart from treasurer expenses. Okay, which we're not seeing on this. I gotcha. Okay, so we've been funding it at 0. That needs to now be $1,000 for our budget.
correct.
And is that something that is that an annual like expense, or is that just?
Yes, it's an annual thing. You pay it out to your tax collector, your
Mhm.
accountant, your assessors, and your treasurer.
Got it. All right. So we'll have to make note of that.
And Gabe, you're going to put that on the sheet.
Yeah, I just wrote it down.
Right.
I just
Alright.
wanted to bring it to your attention.
No, that's helpful. Only other question I have for you, Ryan, was on, I can't remember when we last were delivered the OPEB actuarial report. Was that last year or was that 2 years ago? And you might not know the answer to this, but maybe you can get back to us about when we would expect to see that report, because that has some useful information for us to consider when we're making a decision about what level to contribute to the OPEB fund, which we've been consistently doing $50,000 for a while, but based on that information, I don't know, we theoretically we could make a different decision.
I believe the next time we're doing it is 4/5, fiscal year 4 and 24 and 25. So I would imagine that means that they did it for 23 and 24. 22 and 23, excuse me. So I would expect that.
So that would suggest that maybe we get one for, oh no, wait, you said,
Yeah, I have that we're on the schedule for 22, 23, and then we do 24 and 25. So I would expect that we'll have one presented probably by the end of this year.
okay.
I think depending on how quickly they get it done, it'll either be the fall or the spring.
Okay.
I
So-
can't find a
so-
copy of the original one from Parker for the 22, 23, but I'm sure it's in here somewhere. I just can't find it off
Okay.
the
All right.
cuff.
I'm gonna assume that it's not something that'll inform our discussion about what to fund.
We'll have to use the
FY
same
26.
assumptions.
But
We'll have to use the same assumptions from the last report.
yeah, but it sounds like we will have kind of an updated picture for when we have this discussion about FY27. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Great. Anything else for Ryan before we let him go? All right. Ryan, thanks for being here and for the very clear presentation. And
Of course.
for,
Thank you very much. I
question.
apologize again for my hiccup, especially on the veterans benefit. So
No,
thank you everyone for your patience, and thank you, Gabe, for your help.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
All right.
Everyone
care.
take care. Have some fun.
Take care.
All right. Okay. Let's see. I think there was a hand up, but it looks like was lowered. So I'm going to assume that we can move on to our next.
No, it's
agenda.
back.
No, Mary Lou.
Hi, my name is Mary Lou Conca. I'm a Shutesbury resident, live on Wendell Road, and I couldn't help but be a little concerned when you all were speaking about the veterans benefits. It kind of sounded like a burden on the town. So I wanted to make a comment. I, for one, would not mind my taxes being raised or contributed to such a fund. Okay, then I have a question. I know there's another veteran in town. So how does a veteran become aware that they may be eligible for that benefit? And then number two, is it you guys' decision only to decide what kind of money goes in that fund? Or does it become something the whole town can vote on?
So I'll give a kind of quick answer. I mean, this is an obligation the town has and will have to pay. And so the only question for us is about sort of managing the budget so that we so that we can kind of adequately prepare. But we have no discretion, and nor should we, about whether, I mean, that's a benefit that veteran is entitled to, and they're going to be paid that benefit by the town, regardless what anybody in the town thinks. And so it's really just a question of how to appropriately budget for it. That's what our discussion is about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I couldn't speak to anything about the process for how to apply for those benefits. I'm not sure anybody here would have that info. Susie?
Okay. When you get the amount, when you decide, it sounded like you said 11,000. I heard someone say 13,000. Could we not say, and then somebody else said 50,000 about some other thing, like it was nothing, but you were struggling, your whole group, to come up with a good, solid, high amount when we think of it for a veteran, for a gentleman or a woman who put their life, which
We're paying
I'm
it no
a
matter what.
pacifist, I don't agree with, on the line for us. So I'm just saying, I'd be happy to have my taxes raised. I'd be even happier to know that we are taking care of such people. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I'm just gonna repeat one thing again. It's not our role to determine what that veteran is compensated. And it is our obligation to pay them. And so all our discussion is only about what can we do to essentially prepare for whatever that level of compensation that we're going to be required to pay is. And so when we were tossing around different numbers, it was strictly a matter of saying, well, what's the best assumption we can make about what we're going to be required to pay that? We're not going to have any discretion to say, well, this person should be paid more or should be paid less. That's not determined by us, right? I assume that's the Veterans Administration or some other entity that determines that. Our responsibility is simply just to make sure that our budget has the appropriate funds in a budget line so that we will be prepared to pay that obligation that the town has.
Thank you.
Susie.
Find out about the veterans benefits. You can contact our veterans services that are on our website, and you can talk to them about the process. It's not determined by the town.
Right. Okay. So, all right. It's just about 7:15. So I think what I will do is pull up the budget for our next budget review, which is for the assessors department. Let me share that document. All right.
George, do we need to call ourselves to order?
That's a good point, April.
Because there's two of us are on the committee.
Yes, I believe that is correct.
So I'll move to call us the assessors board to order.
I will second that.
Okay.
Right. Okay, and so I think we have David Burgess. And let me first make this bigger so that we can actually read it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay. How's that? Is that readable?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, David. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, and I just discovered how to unmute.
So, do you actually, before we move forward, do you want to just share who we have from the kind of assessors department with us tonight? And obviously, we have a couple of our FinCom members who are part of the assessors board. I think that's the right term.
Okay, I can't see who all's there, but I'm David Burgess and I'm the principal assessor. And I can't see who else is there.
Right.
Leslie.
Is that Leslie?
Yeah, Leslie Bracebridge.
Okay.
Leslie's the clerk and she does all the work.
Great. All right. Okay, so usually what we do with these budget. So first of all, I should just explain, because I can't recall if we actually met with you last year in preparation for the FY25 budget. But so the purpose of these meetings, we do them with each department head, is to look at their proposed budget for the next fiscal year. So in our case, FY26. We ask that each department to kind of makes their, kind of the best assumptions about what the budget levels ought to be. And then we review that with each department. And it's an opportunity for the FinCom to sort of ask any clarifying questions. It's an opportunity for the department to explain kind of what assumptions went into the specific budget lines. We pay particular attention to any budget line where there's kind of a significant increase or decrease in the proposed amount for the next fiscal year. So maybe what we could do is just kind of walk through your budget kind of line by line, and you can share any information that you think is important for us to know about what assumptions went into the proposed number that you have. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. So you want to walk us through this?
Sure. It's not really a big budget.
Right.
Our expenses are level funded, and that's going to be for the whatever we need in the office, the day-to-day running of the office, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Now, this admin assessor certificate, that is something that Becky put in with the thought that I might want to do it, and I really don't. So that $1,000, in my opinion, is surplus. Unless you want to leave it there in case the next person comes in wants it. But I mean, that would be up to them to ask for it, in my opinion. The next two items, there's really nothing. They've gone up by 20%, 25% on the first one, from 4,000 to 5,000. And that's really because Cartographic, who are our mapping company and also our GIS people, their fees have gone up. It's just that simple. And also with Vision, who also hosts our cloud, if you log on to see if we need that to operate our CAMA system, our computer assisted mass appraisal system. And then we have 2 items at the bottom. The revaluation. We use an outside company every year to cover up the necessary reporting to the DOR each year to set our values. And the final one is for personal property. Hey, George, and a fee for class 504 utilities. 504 utilities are the utilities that we are obliged to value ourselves, that the value does not come from the state. And Roy Bishop and Associates, our vendor company, they will analyze the report from the companies, the utility companies, and verify that they are giving us the right amount of money. And actually will increase what they give us, because the way the state has changed it now, we're allowed to change it a little bit. So he does all that for us.
David, my assumption on that line in the past was that's essentially like an outside firm that we use to value things like telephone poles and other sort of infrastructure that the utility companies operate in our town. Is that?
That's correct. The outside company, which is in this case is Bishop and Associates, they will analyze with the form of list that is sent into us each year, and they will go in and dig out the new growth and any increase in valuation. And as I say, 9 times out of 10, we increase the valuation a little bit each year.
Got it. So that $5,000 that we spend as kind of outsourcing to this firm actually results in some value greater than that coming back to us in terms of assessed value on this property and then associated taxes, I would assume.
Well, the 5,000 doesn't just cover the utilities; it also includes the other personal property accounts in town.
I see.
Yes, it does come back.
Okay. Okay. So I think what I'll do now is just open it up to FinCom members for any questions or clarifying questions that folks wanted to ask. Jim?
Yes. Does the Vision software and the cloud hosting, does that protect us against ransomware attacks? Should we, because we're like any other town, vulnerable to this kind of hacking that's going on out there in the real world, in the real world. And I'm curious if we're protected in any way, if all of our real estate accounts and everything else are protected properly.
Well, since they're in the cloud, they are protected, yes. Whether we'd be protected from a basic attack on our hardware and other operating systems, I can't answer.
But the records that we keep, all the account, all of this, the software does protect that part of it at least, apart from the hardware.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If we wanted to, could we back this stuff up on discs?
Be a hell of a disc.
I assume we do.
Really? Okay.
We put in, after we got hacked by ransomware, there was changes made to back up all our networks, was there not? I don't know if anybody on this call can answer that question, but I certainly remember that was a conversation. I think Ellen actually, we might want to hold that question for Ellen.
Okay.
This actually happened to us?
Yes,
Yes.
twice.
When?
Oh, gosh.
5 years ago,
15
7 years ago?
Yeah, I think about 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
That is amazing. Okay.
It's happened to a lot of municipalities.
Yeah.
Wow. How did they even find us?
But it's a constantly changing environment. You just can't. It's hard keeping up with all of the stuff
Yeah.
that's going on out there in the so-called real
Yes.
digital world.
In small towns, we're easy targets. They
Yeah,
don't
we're
have-
very easy targets. Yeah,
Yeah, they don't have sophisticated IT staff.
yeah.
Wow.
I had a question, David, or any other folks from the assessor's office, on the. I guess this pertains to both the cartographic software, GIS software, and the vision. Are these? Do we have sort of like multi-year contracts with these, or licenses with these, or are they essentially able to set a fee and change that fee every year? How does that work?
Okay, if you look at the CAI, the web hosting, you'll
Yeah,
see that that's for 23 through 26. So they are ramping it up a little bit each year.
I see.
And
So that was
similarly,
built into the contract. Yeah.
yeah, and similarly, Source Vision.
Okay, got it. Okay, so the way the contracts or the license contracts for that software is structured is they build in increases for each year. That
Yeah,
fall.
it seems no matter what you do with the technology, it's just more and more every year.
Gabe.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to assure you about Vadar and how they handle our security. They have the mega storage sites, and they have 4 or 5 sites across the United States of America. So they have a site in Massachusetts, but all of our information in every other town that they do business with is backed up in these other sites across the nation. They also have cybersecurity. They back up daily. So they are on the cutting edge of security as far as assessing programs and accounting programs go, because our accounting program is also Vadar. So as far as them getting corrupted, if they get corrupted, then we're all getting corrupted across the country, because these mega sites, I've been in it, I've seen it. They dress you in this white suit, and they scan your eyeballs and they show you how they're storing everything. So it's really interesting, but I think you need to feel comfortable about how they're doing it. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bob.
Gabe.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was just going to mention, Gabe, isn't the tax collector's data also protected by Vadar?
Yes, yes, you have all 3 systems now are on Vadar. That was your recent conversion.
Yep. Thanks.
Super. Any final questions for the assessors team?
Yeah,
Go ahead, George.
when we met Leslie in our last meeting, we talked about the expense line. Actual spent was 783 last year, and we're asking for 3711 this year. And we budgeted 3711 for fiscal 26. We also budgeted that same amount for the current fiscal year. Year to date, we've spent $800. And given what you know, are you really anticipating another $2,900 in expenses?
I would defer to David. Is he still here?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you are up at the top. I'm sorry. But one thing that I had said a year or 2 ago was that right now you've got 2 people heading for retirement. When Kevin was here, he went to a lot of training and a lot of conferences. He charged for mileage, which isn't being charged for just running around town and looking at properties. There's things that are being overlooked here on purpose, because just as David isn't applying for his $1,000 for his excellent skills,
Certification.
it doesn't mean that it's not going away. I would, with David's, I would say that we may spend another $1,000 to get the property cards updated. There's postage, which I would need a new box before the end of the year. So, you might want to take 1,000 off, but I wouldn't want to take more than that, especially with the fact that there will be a new, well, at least there's going to be a new assessor's clerk someday who will need training. There could be a new assessor at any time, although I'm grateful for the board that we've got right now. They've been as steady as one could ask for, but so I don't know how you want to handle it.
Well, we just want to make it, yeah, we want to make it, on a reasonable estimate. I mean, if you're telling me, you're saying $1,000, I forgot, what was that again?
Off the top of my head, I'm saying, David, you may remember better than I how much to update the field cards, but I'm guessing that we could easily spend another 1,000. And I don't know how you prepare for when new people come in and need the training, because that's where your expenses come in.
Well, yeah, hopefully we can know in time to budget for it. And if we
Yeah.
hadn't, we can always rely on FinCom reserve or account transfer at
Perfect.
your end.
Perfect. Yeah.
So how about if we trim $1,200 off it and went with 2,500?
I think that would be reasonable. Yeah, as I see it in the budget that I'm looking at, we're always trying to worry about what's coming next, which is great. And if we need new assessors, there's going to have to be assessments going to a school, and that all costs money. But at the moment, we're pretty good. I think it's a case of sometimes people believe that once they've got it, they don't want to give it back.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, we're open to giving it back if you really need it. I mean, we can be reasonable, but
Can be.
We were worried here.
we can be, yeah.
It can be.
All right, so we've got a proposal to fund this at $2,500. Any FinCom members have any concerns about that, or any other ideas? Okay. All right.
That's good.
So I'm going to put that in as our new sort of placeholder, which helps because we've got a couple other lines that increase. Okay, great. Any other questions, Bob?
Yeah, well, David said that he was not interested in getting the administrative assessor certificate line funded. Is that something we can change, David, or?
As long as same guidelines, as long as you're willing to put it back when somebody else comes in.
Yeah, when the time comes, we can talk about that.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
for now, we don't need that in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm just curious, David, is it that you do not need to be certified or somebody else is going to pay for it or what?
I am certified, and with my certification, I'm entitled to another $1,000, and I wouldn't be bothered with it, to be honest with you, filling out all the paperwork.
But it's not an actual, like, it doesn't cost you $1,000 to get certified? Is that
No,
what's
no.
going on?
I've got all the certifications I'm going to need.
Good. Okay, thanks. Got it.
I think right now you've got a very strong department and people who are retired and are being very generous.
Yes.
And I'm saying that of the board members as well as the office staff.
We appreciate
Just
that.
out of cur-
Very appreciative.
Especially our assessor's clerk.
Yeah, we really
Yes,
do.
definitely.
Yep.
That is, what you do, Leslie, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, April. You're very kind to say that, and
It's very true.
I'm sure it's true.
The department's
Totally
running
true.
great.
Guys, do
Just
a
out
great
of
job.
curiosity, when there's extra money at the end of the fiscal year, can it all be moved into free cash?
It does.
That's what
get-
happens.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. Right. Okay, fine.
And on the other hand, if we needed that extra 1,000, we could probably get it from the finance committee's reserve fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's take out the 1,000 for the administrative assessor
So we're going to zero
certification.
we're going to zero this out for FY26, and we'll bring it back when it needs to be in there.
Yeah.
Year. Okay.
And
All right.
FY25 has not been spent yet. Is that also true? The FY25 that's in there, that was already approved last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not been spent. Okay.
No.
No, it sounds like that's one that's not going to be, and again, just as you asked, Howard,
Right.
that'll end up getting
Okay.
turned to free cash.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
David.
All right, any final questions before we let our assessor's office off the
Yeah,
hook for
so
the?
the assessors board should adjourn. Because we did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll
I
move that
move
we're adjourned.
I move that we adjourn.
Adjourned.
Okay, I
We're
vote
adjourned.
aye. Okay,
Aye.
thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thank you, AJ.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
And just
Thank
so
you
you
all
know,
for-
you also convened at 7:15. You just didn't
Good.
hear it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
So thanks
you.
to the whole team for putting together this information and for joining us tonight. And answering questions. I really appreciate it.
You're
Good
welcome.
night, everybody.
Thank you
Good
for
night.
your support.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for your hard work.
Good night. All right, let's.
All right, I got it.
Okay. Stop share. All right. Okay, great. All right, so we've finished our kind of budget reviews that we had scheduled for tonight. I think the next couple things that I think we want to do is, one, we want to look at and discuss the new school budget with the new, much easier to digest format. But I think I know there are a couple of members, a couple of town residents that are in the meeting, and I think they probably want to hear or participate in our discussion about a public request that has come forth. So I'm going to move that up in the agenda, and then we'll do the SES budget after. So I think I shared an email about this with the committee. So I think essentially we've got members, citizens of our town have expressed an interest. It's actually kind of an interesting process. Like, how does, if it's not, if it's usually capital projects are sponsored by, a specific department. And in this case, there's a sort of interest or a proposal for the town to invest in a capital project, but that's really coming from residents of the town, and it would be to essentially subscribe to a system called Open Checkbook, which, as I understand it, is kind of an online, essentially kind of like accounting system that promotes kind of public transparency into kind of the spending that in a municipality that's subscribing to the service is making. So in sort of real time, I guess, residents have access to information about town spending on kind of various lines that make up the municipality's budget. So Amanda, you sent the initial email to me about this. I know you've also communicated with I think the select board and our town manager about this. Did I do an okay job of summarizing the I guess the purpose of what Open Checkbook is designed to do?
Yeah, hi, everyone. Thanks, AJ, for bringing this up for us. Yeah, very quickly. I could expand on that a little bit for a minute if you'd like, to give everybody a better idea.
I mean, if you think it would be helpful, if there's information that you think would be helpful to share, and
Okay.
a minute, sure, take the time.
Okay, this is mostly information that Diane and I got from interviewing Mike Olkin, who owns Open Check LLC. It's a partnership. So let me just start out by saying that the cost is minimal for this program. according to the Division of Local Services Property Tax Impact Calculator, the initial startup cost of $5,200 will only add like $3.97 to the average fiscal year 25 Shutesbury single family tax bill, which is, they say, $6,268 for an average assessment of $395,988. And then after that, the yearly maintenance fee of $1,200 is effectively not going to impact tax bills or the tax rate at all. I can go over a few of the benefits just to give people an idea, and then just say where they can find this information themselves. There's a lot of benefits. It's an accounts payable only system, and the information will be available to everyone, town officials, town departments, and the public, pretty much in real time, 24/7, which is nice. Of course, it increases transparency, accountability, and public trust in local government. And it was created and administered by a local business person, which is nice. And I think it'll help residents understand the financial workings of town government, which is pretty complex when you get right down to it. It'll reduce public requests for financial information, I expect, and it may even increase resident interest and participation in local government, which I think we all want. So according to Mike, it will integrate very easily with the system that the town is already using. And the system automatically gleans the financial data each week after it's all set up. And apparently it's very easy. And also it will, because it makes the recent payment information available to all town officials, maybe having more eyes on things will help everyone be aware of expenditures. Across departments, I've heard in the past there's been some problems with things not being paid on time. Maybe this will help. It may help to resolve problems more quickly and even aid in planning. If you'd like to see a demo, the Open Check LLC website has a demo there, and it's pretty easy, and cool to look at. And of course, you can just, if you want to plug in the numbers yourselves, you can just go to the DLS site and get on their little calculator. But that's basically it. We just think it's a really cool thing for the town and for the public, and it hardly costs anything.
Okay, I had a follow-up question for, and I guess this would be maybe for either you or Diane, since you guys have done some of the research. So we have a kind of new development, which I think is really quite welcome, which is that we now have a process whereby our expense reports that are produced by our accountant and in the past were sort of distributed via email to the town manager, and the FinCom would get them. They're now being posted routinely on the Shutesbury town website. I can just quickly perhaps you're aware of this. Yeah,
I've seen them.
And so if it's possible for you to just kind of, if you have a thought about this, what would be the value add of a system like Open Checkbook above and beyond the information that is available to all town residents by looking at the most recent expense report that gets posted that's now being posted to the website, which does give you year-to-date spending on every single item in our budget. It gives you the prior year's spending level as well. So if you could, if there's any information you could share about kind of what this system what additional information this system would provide above and beyond seeing a most recent expense report, it'd be helpful to know.
Yeah, I think I can help you with that, AJ. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Awesome. The open check system gets a lot more specific, like to the vendor level.
So you would
Um,
see the names of vendors that
You
were,
can see the names of vendors and like if a certain vendor is serving multiple departments in town, it will be split up by the departments. It's just, the information is more specific and more granular.
okay.
I can actually show you a little bit of it if you if you allow me to share a screen.
Well, I think what I'll do is, just because I appreciate you offering that, we do have a really packed agenda tonight. So, and I think you've told us about where we can view a demonstration. So I was going to ask FinCom members if they'd like more information to kind of check that demonstration on their own time, and then we'll at some point, I'm going to also communicate with Gabe, because I think this project is going to need input, obviously not just from the FinCom, but from all of the departments that are involved in kind of running the finances of the town, including the accountant. I think probably most importantly, but the town administrator, the accountant, treasurer. So, I think at some point there'll be a kind of an opportunity for them to chime in as well. So why don't we have FinCom members take a look at that demonstration on their own time? Okay.
If it would be helpful, I'm sure Mike would come to a future meeting
Okay.
and demo the software.
All right. Good. Good to know. Jim.
Yes, Diane and Amanda, would this include the MLP's activity as well or not? Just a quick question on that. I'm curious.
If you write checks, I imagine so.
Yeah, well, because the MLP is in a completely separate economic world, so to speak. I didn't know whether it would be more expensive to include them as well, or even appropriate.
I wouldn't expect so, but Mike would really be the one to talk to about this.
Okay.
We're just a rah-rah department.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, great.
AJ?
All right, George, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I can't raise my hand, unfortunately. I don't know why that is. A few things. I think your point about the new report is really important. I think the most important thing for the public is to see what the budget amounts are and how they're spending, how a department is spending against their budget. I think that's a really important point. This tool, I went to Northampton's website and I looked at it, and it does what Diane described. You can go to you can pick the levels. So we have basically 12 different levels of spending. One of them is personal property, schools. So you can go to personal property, then you can drop down on fire, police, and then you can look at how they're spending their money. So you can get details of how they're spending their money. I don't know how the benefit the public will get from that, but it does get to that granular level. It's a great accounting tool. And when I worked in business, those are kinds of tools I used all the time. I see much more. I mean, if the public wants it, they're going to use it. I think they're going to get confused when they just start seeing lists of names and dollar amounts, unless they see a name on there that they want to question. I don't know. I think the higher level report is much more important. But I think for us, I think for the accountant, when we have a meeting and I say to Leslie, you spent $800, what'd you spend it on? I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to have that information before the meeting starts. So I think for the financial people, it can be real beneficial. And I think your point about the financial people being involved and the select board, because they're the ones who decide what I think they have an interest in looking at the public and transparency perspective. I don't know what they'll say. I assume they'll agree with us. So I'm definitely open-minded to this. I see real benefits to the town. If the public thinks they're going to benefit from it, great. I think we should maybe have a little team together to have this person come in and demonstrate it to us. And as far as the financial team goes, in particular the accountant, the question is $1,200 a year. Yeah, okay, minor impact on our taxes. How much for the maintenance and the work behind the scenes that's going to be required by our staff. We'll need to understand that. I assume that once it's set up, that's probably going to be seamless. It's probably a tool. If I read correctly, I thought I saw somewhere that they do integrate with Vadar. If that's true, then it's probably not going to be heavily intensive. But you never know how these things work. They advertise, oh, it's integrated with Vadar, and then the account says, yeah, integrated. Not exactly, what's the definition in integrated? But that said, I'm definitely open to this app, and quite honestly, I think I would use it. And so I think we should research it.
I think your point is important though, like that it would be a deal breaker, I think, if this was not a system that integrated seamlessly with Vadar. Like to me, that like we're not gonna completely like change our whole entire accounting system and process to make like a tool that, while certainly sounds like it'd be valuable, like that would really concern me. So I'm happy to hear that there's at least an initial indication that it does integrate with Vadar, but yeah, I think that's an important point that would have to be investigated. Let me go to Bob and then Amanda.
Yeah, I just want to say it seems like a great thing to me. I mean, we struggled with getting expense reports in a timely way. I'm really happy that the town, through somebody's intercession, has now, I think maybe partly through our own and Gabe's, has now managed to get them posted on the website. That's an extraordinary improvement, both for our purposes and also for the public. And I think this would actually improve the improvement, if you will. And so I think transparency is a good thing. If there's no concern about any kind of corruption of our system, and I don't see how that would be so. But on the other hand, what do I know about cybersecurity? But I think if that were the case and it was not a threat to our security, then I think it'd be a great improvement for a very reasonable amount of money. So I think it requires a little more research, but I think it sounds pretty good at first glance. I did go to the demo, and I thought it was pretty cool too.
Okay, Amanda.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that, and I think Diane can back me up, that Mike did specifically mention Vadar as being a system that they work with pretty regularly, and
Yeah,
that
he did.
yeah, and it was and that it's quite seamless, and he indicated that it actually saves staff time. I can't really say how, but anyway, he would be able to. So, thank you.
All right. So I just want to thank Amanda and Diane for kind of doing some legwork on this, and I think it's very positive to have town residents take this level of interest and kind of pursue a project like this. So what I'll commit to is like coordinating and speaking with Gabe, our town accountant, and treasurer, kind of getting, getting some, well, I was going to say get their feedback, but I think it's going to have to be kind of a bunch of people providing feedback on whether this is worth pursuing. And so there will be follow up with those folks, and we'll see what concerns or level of interest is on the part of those folks, and we'll see where to go from there. So thanks for bringing this to our attention.
Well, thank you, AG.
Thank you so much.
And everybody for listening. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Okay, let's talk school budget. So I'm gonna share, I think I have this open. Let's see. Okay, here we are. All right, so Susie, why don't you maybe kind of give us some background on this new, well, I guess it's not a new format, it's really the old format, but it's it's been updated for FY26. Is there anything you wanted to share about this?
Yeah, I want to say that Caitlin Sheridan started just a couple years ago, and she's taken a lot of trainings, and she was told that it was not appropriate bookkeeping to have operating lines in your budget that are paid out of grants. And when you train people and we want them to be trained, then we need to understand where they're going next. So we went through a process of her trying to understand how the information should be presented. And in the past, the operating costs would be demonstrated on this page, and then that total cost would then have another line called revenue sources, and then we would have the town appropriation. So in some ways, it's the same information, it's just in a little different order. And in fact, the next page is the one we should probably look at. So we have the fact that the operating costs that the town will be responsible for are there. And then the application of specific revenue areas, school choice, rural aid, the federal and state grants. And then we have, if we add all of those pieces together, then that that number. Could you make it a little bigger for me?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, I got it on my paper. That 3,037,000 something number is really all the expenses that it takes to run the school. And you can see that the town appropriation is 2,591,000, blah, blah, blah. So so this is meant to give a little more clear picture of the total cost for the school, and then where the revenue sources come from. Thank you very much. And in doing this process and really trying to understand it, it was interesting to me what I didn't understand before and what I understand better. In the town appropriation part of the pie, we actually get Chapter 70 money. Now in the secondary school, that Chapter 70 money is taken out of the picture, and then everything else becomes other fundings and what's left for the towns to divide up. But that's not how this budget has ever been presented. The revenue that comes in from Chapter 70 for our elementary school is on the revenue page. And they, of course, take out some monies for this and that, and then there's a net of that. So in this town appropriation for our elementary school, we actually get about 600,000 in Chapter 70 money. So we are not paying, from the taxpayers are not paying the 85,000. I mean, 85%, they're paying less than that. So that's an interesting thing when we look at all the pieces, how we've seen it in the past and how the two budgets, the regional and this one, don't exactly show the same path, but all the pieces are there.
Can I ask just one quick clarifying question? So if I understood you correctly there, this figure would be actually a combination of Chapter 70 revenue plus town tax levy that pays that value there. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting different picture. But in any case, when you look at the change from FY25 to FY26, you can see that this budget represents a 4.93 increase, and we know that they negotiated the contracts. I sent you out the information about the contracts that were negotiated. I want to just say that Shutesbury Elementary was cited as a school of distinction because it was a met its MCAS scores and other goals were above the expectation performances that for the MCAS. And then the other thing they did is it is one of the top 10 schools in the state for improvement in attendance. And as a result, they were awarded a basketball signed by all the Celtics. These are notable efforts that the school has accomplished. And when I looked at the staffing pattern, I think they figured out how to use paraeducators and teachers in an effective combination so they could flexibly meet some of the needs of the kids that they have. It's not that our kids don't have these needs. It's in fact that they have a staffing pattern and some leadership that really meets those needs. So when I look at a 4.93 increase with a contract that was negotiated, there are a few notes in the margin that tell you some of the other increases. But I feel like the evidence for the effectiveness is in the performance that they've had and were recognized for.
Mhm. All right, that's super helpful. Okay, let's open it up for questions. So I think our goal for this discussion, I think we've got a couple goals. One is to just, well, I think the kind of most important goal we have is to is to share with Susie any additional clarifying questions that we have for Caitlin in advance of them coming to actually meet with us for their budget review, which I can't.
February 4th.
February 4th, okay. So Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, at the last meeting we had about this, we did discuss that the budget presentation was a little wanting in the sense that it was kind of confusing, and part of that was confusing was the marginalia, and I see there's a lot of that here, and for me it's still confusing because, you know, I see an item like say line number 44, and it's going down 9.61%, but in fact it says 71,000 grant money was applied to that line. So maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but the way I interpret that line is that actually it went up about $44,000, and it's being shown as going down 9.5%. So to me, that's not clear. That's not doesn't represent what I consider to be accounting. I don't like the idea that this notion that grant, whatever supports the budget, makes a difference whether it's counted as an expense or not. I think that the support of the budget should be also represented in this. I don't find the revenue page in my document, so I think that I submitted an example, which was the Pelham budget, which did show the total operating expenses of the school, line by line. And this particular budget presentation, I see some of the lines that are being, or the expenses that are being supported by grants aren't even listed, as far as I can tell, on the expenses. So
did you see the final page that has each of the grants listed and each of the?
I did. Yes, I did, Susie.
Okay, making sure you see that information.
Yeah, I looked at this thing several times today and tried to make sense of it, and you know, it just was not clear to me. And what I did take away from that was we still have this kind of separation between determined by the sources of funding that somehow distorts what the cost of running the school is. I'd like to see the cost of running the school listed out, and then the supporting revenues listed out, and then we know what the town's obligations are through the draft, what the school needs from the town. We can look at the particulars of why that request was made, both on the expenses, the projected expenses, but this, with all these marginalia, it gets really confusing, and it's hard to understand what what's going on. Now, I do see there's a summary on a couple of pie charts and another summary and a chart, but I still don't like the way this is presented. And I don't see why, if Pelham has presented their budget and Amherst presents the budget in a different way, or the way that I'm trying to describe here, why we can't have it done that way. I don't understand your point about how her training would not allow her to do that. I don't get that.
So we have a union and we have a business office, and she does support the 4 schools budgets. And I have known other people in school finance, and there is actually the people I knew all were in regional offices. Regional offices usually make a presentation. That's why Pelham has a presentation, because they have a regional business office. She's coming from writing up the budget in all these lines, and we see them. She put in the pie chart that does show you where the money's coming from and shows you what the total cost is. And that is where Union 28 is at. Will they get into a full-blown separate presentation model like Pelham does, because Pelham works out of the Amherst system? I don't know. Right now, I felt like the information that she had to follow some guidelines, and the information is summarized in that second page that has the 2 pie charts and a table up above that shows you where the money's coming from, and the detail in the back that shows which of the grants funds which of the projects. So that's why I feel this is a clear effort that meets both her budgeting requirements and our information. And if we decide it has to go further in a different direction, we should talk about it in the long run. But what you can see is there's a 4.93 increase. And you can see that there's a decrease in reliance on school choice money, because that is something that they have agreed needs to happen. And so some of the increase at 4.93 is absorbing some of the costs for the MLL position into the budget. And some of the margin notes explain that.
Jim.
Yes, Susie, couldn't we, to simplify matters, at least to me, and I'm no accountant, of course, couldn't we just separate the grant money, like on line 44, which you've got up on the screen here, just not, it seems to be applying the rural aid money at this point in characterizing the budget just confuses things. Couldn't we just put that, or just pull all of those grant monies to one side, or put them in a separate place? Because after all, you may make the school might make changes as to where they want to spend rural aid and all of that grant money, and there's so many different sources. But to put it right here in the main budget, I think is just a confusing mistake.
The rural aid is not in this main budget. The rural aid is taken out of this main budget because grants and are not supposed to be in the operating part of this document. All of those grants are listed at the end in the narrative, more in a narrative form, where you can see what they're planning to spend on rural aid. We've had questions about how they decide what to spend. That last page with title grants, IDEA grants, all of that stuff shows you where they are spending those grant monies for what positions. Some positions are split because they took school choice. Let's see, what did they do? They stopped funding any of the school choice, the 32,000 last year. They took it out of the school choice and they put it, half of it into a grant and half of it is in the operating costs, because they didn't have a grant that would pay the whole thing, or because they make those kinds of decisions. But I don't feel like the information is not available. It could be confusing because it's different than it has been, but what you see in all the lines are the ones that are being paid out of the town appropriation, which includes Chapter 70 money. What you see at the end are all lines that are being paid out of grants. And in order to do that, she noted in the margins where the money's been pulled out, and she put the addendum of all of the grants listed at the end.
Yeah, so Jim, in other words, like this 71,306, that's not included in the budgeted amount here, right? That's because that's being that's a grant contribution.
So the total cost is really 249,656 plus 71,336.
So if I can just kind of share I found this format to be quite good actually, and I addressed sort of my concerns. Like I think to your point, Bob, like I understand your point. Like if the point was to understand exactly what the change in total spending for paraeducator special education salaries was from FY25 to FY26. So the total expenditure, including, town appropriated expenses and, grant and school choice, it requires an additional step, which is, but the information is here because even in that addendum at the end, I mean, we see both what the FY25 and the FY20, sorry, I should look down real late here, both what the FY25 and the FY26 values were. So I mean, I think, if that's a specific question that you have, the information is here. It just, might require a step or two. But I think the combination of having, for me, both a clear understanding that the increase in our appropriation is 4.9%, but also now having information about the total spending, representing an increase of 3.33%, answers the sort of big question I had, which was really hard from that last format, which was to answer the question, well, like basically, like what is in terms of the total spending for the district? It wasn't clear last time how much that was increasing from FY25 to FY26 because we weren't seeing these numbers on this slide, which include like all of the different sources of funding, the appropriation, the grant funds, the school choice, all in one place. So so the combination of having this information here and then the very detailed information at the end that shows us exactly what these additional sources of revenue, what they're being used for, I think I'm quite happy with that. But that's just my take on it. Jim.
Yes, could you go back to line 44 again?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, now should in FY26 it's 249,656. Is the real number of what this sped salaries is going to cost us? Is it really 249,656 plus 26,531?
Oh no, 71 plus 71,336
plus this. But again, when you say the real amount, I think the proper way to say it is, what is the total amount the school is spending on paraeducator special education salaries, right? So that would the total amount that the school is spending on that line is 249,656
plus that.
Yes.
Why not put the two together so when you come back next year in FY27 and you look and you say, well, let's see what we spent, 186, 251, 276, and now it's 249, but this year it's 300 and something odd thousand. It just seems to be confusing in the long term, if I'm making any sense. George could probably explain it a little bit better than I can, but I just wonder why we put those numbers in this report at this time when we could just leave them off to one side. I don't know. That's just my impression.
Susie?
This is an in transition time. She went back to FY25 to help you see. But as we go forward, those change columns will look more familiar. And I can hear you saying it's about change, and I understand that, and I've explained why it got changed. And remember, this woman does this budgeting for 4 towns. And so I feel like we got some information, we worked on it, and maybe next year we can move the ball forward down the field a little bit more. But I feel like if you can work on it this year and see how the 2 pages relate to each other. And if you have any questions, I can bring them to her. Not a question of format at this point, but a question of, I don't know what your questions are.
But again, just to be clear, we now have a very clear picture of what the total amount the school is spending, how that compares from FY25 to FY26, right? So these numbers on this slide are inclusive of all of the sources of spending, whether they come from town appropriation, grants, school choice, right? So the thing that does take a little bit of extra work is if you have a specific question about a specific line in the budget and want to know, like the one Bob and Jim were discussing, like this line here, on the chart it says 9.6% decrease, and I understand that's a little bit less clear as to what that is. But again, the information is here. We can see what how rural aid and school choice were being used for both FY25 and FY26. So if you have a specific question about a specific line and what the change is from FY25 to FY26, it is possible to calculate that using the combination of what's in that, in the line item budget and what's in the appendix here.
Well, I agree we can figure it out, especially after all this explanation that I've just received from you and Susie, but I just don't know why we can't have, the income on one side and costs on the other, and not mix the two up a little bit. It's just my way of looking at things. I'm done.
Okay.
Right.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say, just to repeat, and I'll be very brief if I can. Something that Jim Hemingway just said, and I think George would recognize this as basic accounting. You list your expenses for operating your department, and then you list the supporting revenues on another page. And that's how it's done. That's how it's done in the town of Shutesbury. When we do our budget here, it's done that way in Pelham. It's done that way in a lot of places. Why do we have to have a number that's not accurate representing a line and then have to do a calculation to say, oh, that's because it's funded from this grant or this other source of revenue? Frankly, we don't have any control over how the school committee decides to spend their grant money. We just are controlling what we're going to ask the taxpayers to provide to support it. And then all these little variables that are being shifted around. Oh, there's 70,000 coming out of here, and this one is being half supported by this grant, half supported by that grant. No, we just need to know what the cost of the line is, and then what the supporting revenues are, and what the bottom line requirement for the town to support the draft budget would be. And I think it would be clear, very clear, if it was done that way. And this is not clear. Like you say, you can find the information here. It's Where's Waldo, and we could do a couple extra calculations. You're right. I do appreciate and I do acknowledge that the total numbers are present in that graph and that page. That is an improvement over the last version that we saw, so that's good. But I still think we could improve it massively by just being more clear about the accounting part of this. And I would appreciate if, other members of the committee, George maybe, or someone else could weigh in on this. That's my opinion, though.
All right, so let's do this. If there are so I think everybody's kind of clear on what this, how to read this latest version of the budget is. If there are any follow-up questions for Caitlin, there's really sort of only one opportunity between now and when they come in, which is our next meeting. So, and that might even be, I don't know if that's enough time for her to respond, but if you have a substantive question, about a specific budget line or whatnot, please be prepared to share that at our next meeting. The only other thing I want to say is I think it's really important for us when we meet with Caitlin in a month to, in addition to talking through some of these issues around kind of how to read information and how to get answers to different questions. I think it's really important that we express appreciation for the continued, there's clearly an effort to be responsive to our requests. And I've found that from last year to this year, every time we produce this list of questions, she comes back with really kind of thoughtful, responses. We ask for different format. I know it's maybe not 100% of what people want to see. It's certainly, for me, I felt like this was a big improvement over the last one. And I just think it's important that we express some appreciation for her responsiveness to our requests, because, that's fair. And it's also that, I want to encourage her to continue to be responsive to our needs in the future. So, okay. Anything else, April?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention in support of this is that she's also doing this for 4 towns. We're not the only one at the party. And I think we need to respect her process as well. And she's clearly working with us.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress, definitely.
Yeah. But we're getting closer, I think, to having a format that I think allows us to kind of get good answers to various questions. George?
I'd be curious to hear how the other towns are reacting to the new format. I wonder if they're getting the same conversation, what kind of feedback they're giving her. I understand Bob and Jim's point. I think they're valid points. I do know that the data is here and I can see it, and I can certainly work with this data. And so for me, the question is this method saving Caitlin a lot of effort when she puts together her budgets and starts running her expenses during the regular year? Is that really what's driving this? And I can respect that and support that. We have seen it the other way in the past, and it's been very informative. And if that had the school choice money in it, like this does, then that's a big win. But if it sounds to me like she's saying from a regulatory perspective, she needs to present it this way. And I have a feeling it's because it's the way it works in her system. If that's not the case, I tend to agree with Bob and Jim.
Well, we can ask her that, right? Yeah.
I did. And she explained it.
Okay.
She said that it was not proper accounting to have grant funded lines in your operating budget. And that's why she made the change. That's what she has been told. And I, having learned how to be a town clerk, at some point you have to go with what you're being told. And sometimes you can work past that, but you have to start somewhere. And she was told this. So that's what she's doing. She's not doing it for fun and games.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Okay. let's see, do we still have Gabe? Great. Gabe, I think you had a couple of items that you wanted to kind of check in with us or discuss with us. I think one was about getting a volunteer from the FinCom for the negotiating.
Right,
group.
yes, we have two contracts that are expiring, and we're tackling the police chief first, and then we'll tackle the fire chief next. The police chief contract is expiring, so the select board has asked for a representative on the FinCom because we are negotiating wages and other benefits. So we want to get that started soon so that we know what we're putting in our budget for her, for the police chief.
Okay. All right. I saw that Susie, I guess in response to seeing this on the agenda, said that she was interested. I don't know if there's anybody else from the FinCom that's interested in taking this on.
I'm also interested, but I could also do that through the personnel board. It would
Yeah.
not be a problem.
All right.
That would be awesome because we are asking both sides to give us a volunteer.
Okay.
So April, could your group talk about that? I did.
Yeah,
send
we're
an
next
email.
meeting on a week from this Thursday, the
Great.
personnel board.
So who's your
I'll
chair?
bring it up.
Okay, awesome. You'll do that. Okay.
Yeah, Peg Ross is our chair, but I'll bring it up.
Okay. So
So we'll have Susie, right? Susie, you're still interested? Okay, great.
So
I
can
don't think.
Oh.
Go ahead. No,
Well, I was just wondering if I could nominate Susie to be the FinCom representative to the police chief's contract negotiation.
Great. So I'll second that. So I think this requires a vote. So let's go ahead. Any other discussion? Nope. George?
Urbanite, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, aye.
And Stein, aye.
Okay, great. So Susie is going to be our volunteer.
Great.
Gabe, I think you had a couple other things like town meeting date.
Yeah, I actually have a little list here going. So the select board is wanting me to ask you to consider moving your town meeting date to the middle of May or towards the end of May. They are definitely willing to have a joint meeting. Their concern is the Amherst Pelham budget and all the transition that's happening right now. We're going to start interviewing town administrator candidates. You might have a new town administrator in February, March, right in the middle of all of this. And with all the transition that's going on, we really think that pressing for an April date might be aggressive. How do you guys feel about that?
It's good to me.
Sounds awesome.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So
Yeah.
then the next question would be, when in May, what Saturday in May would you guys want to consider? You don't have to answer me that tonight unless you want to. I can report back to the select board. They are going on every other Tuesdays again. We're going to try to be opposite of you. So we're going to go 14/28. That's why I asked for your dates for your meetings so that we could get ourselves on an opposite night, which we're going to do. So do you want to take time to think about a May meeting or?
I'm
What's your
looking at the schedule and the choices in May are 3, 10, 17, and 24. I go for 17.
So I'm just about to say that
Not that day.
my son is graduating from college that weekend.
Yeah.
So
The
I'm gonna be
17th?
out of town. Yep.
It's my wedding anniversary, so.
Remember for decades, since I've been in town up until about 7 years ago, we always had our annual town meeting in May. Was it always the first or second weekend, or was it the last weekend before Memorial Day?
It was when weather was really good.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
why
the
we moved it
first.
up.
That's right. No, it
Let's
was
go for the
Dave.
10th.
Yeah,
All
that,
right.
Yeah,
I would be happy with that, yeah.
that's fine.
That
The
is
10th?
fine.
I
Yep.
can do the 10th.
So I will take back May 10th to them. Okay,
And
so
then,
I have a couple of budget items.
sure, go ahead.
So one of them is we need to talk about how we're going to handle PFAS. That's the elephant in the room, really, money wise. We've gone through close to $300,000 so far, and we have maybe 20 some odd thousand left till June. The constant testing is a drain on our finances. Our loan money is spent. The 150,000 that we are borrowing, we haven't borrowed that yet. But we're borrowing. So I'm trying to think budget wise, do you do a maintenance plan or do you, with some money in there for new homes? It's $800 for every poet system that goes into a house. It's $259 every time we run a report on a house. You have 70 houses.
Ooh.
So the reports are run quarterly, is my understanding. But the dollars are big. And I don't know if we should do a line item that's $50,000 in the permanent budget to handle PFAS until this is really a global problem. And I'm hoping that the state and the federal government will do something about it. But right now, our town and our taxpayers bearing the burden of this. And truthfully, it's just hellacious.
Mhm.
So where do we start? I'm going to have to come to you for a reserve fund transfer. Probably not me, probably your next TA. I probably have enough money to cover the bills that are coming through right now. We had a ton of bills that had not been paid. So the admin secretary who's working with, she's a temp who's working with me right now. We just put through a passel of bills. So I don't know what the total of that was. Gail's running the warrant, but it's going to chew up a lot of that 20,000 we have left. We have 4 or 5 PFAS bills from May of last year that are going to go on your town meeting. So we have finally dug in and figured out that piece of it. But what it has made me realize is the expense of continuing testing on all these houses is huge. So do you want to keep funding it with an article and use free cash and keep it separate? Or do you want to make it a budget item?
Good
So
question.
don't answer me now. Think about this because I think it's something that we need to put on the next agenda. And I will have a firmer number on what I actually have left after we run the warrant this week. But it is a very huge concern I have that that's going to impact you guys. Not only does the Amherst Pelham school budget impact you, and the school budgets, but this is really going to impact you and your spare cash if you have any.
Gabe, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you anticipate coming up like in the next, say, 12 months? Do we have a reasonable grip about what, number one, we've got a $150,000 loan that hasn't landed yet, right?
Correct.
More than
And we
one.
have no idea, is that being paid? Was that a debt exclusion vote?
I
Is
think that,
it inside the budget?
I don't even know if there's been a payment plan been devised by that. I think there
It
was,
has not.
it
It
was
has
deferred,
not.
right? The payments were deferred.
When it comes due, it's going to be debt service in our operating budget.
That's
Right.
what I was
And it's
afraid
no
of.
interest, right?
I don't think it's no interest. The water pollution people, clean water, they do charge interest.
Well, if we could get this information together, it would make it easier to make some kind of a plan.
I would love to, Bob, but a letter was supposed to have been written over a year ago that wasn't written and we couldn't borrow. And I'm trying to piece this all together right now.
Yeah.
And I am meeting with the DEP on Thursday because evidently the town declared an emergency.
Right.
And Susie and I worked on this today. And we're getting closer to being able to write this letter to get the borrowing completed. So I feel really good about that, but with Becky leaving in November and the holidays, it is really, this has been all I've been doing is trying to figure this mess out, honestly.
I appreciate it.
I think we're there, but I can't tell you what the loan rate's gonna be until we go out to bid. And I need to complete this letter and get it to bond council, which is on the agenda this week. And then we can go out to borrow the 150,000. George just gave me a very important piece of information, and it's inside the debt. It's in our budget. So you're not only going to have to think about ongoing PFAS costs for future, you're going to have to think about how you're going to pay for this loan. One of the things I have to tell the Clean Water Trust is, are we assessing the houses specifically for their PFAS? And I think the answer to that is no,
Town is paying.
because it's right.
Yeah.
So now your whole tax base is bearing the burden of it.
Mhm.
So anyway, that I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it because we could spend the whole night on it.
I will definitely put it on, um, if not our next agenda, because we do have 3 budget reviews planned for the
Okay.
21st, which is a lot. But definitely the 4th, when we're only planning to meet with the school.
Good. Okay.
Maybe we can tackle that question on the 4th.
Sure. And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to get the juices flowing,
Yeah,
get you
no,
guys
that's-
thinking about it and getting you to understand that this is, I'm sure you do understand it, but the dollar amount is scary. And so the next thing I have is the select board
Could I-
is, yep,
Yeah,
I can't
George,
raise
did
my
you want-
hand again.
Yeah, of course.
So just thinking back on this, Becky did tell us it was interest-free loans.
okay,
I'm certain that she did.
Mhm.
And I also believe she said 10-year loan payments. So we were basically thinking $15,000 a year for each of the 150s. And I think we've pulled 150 twice, no?
Yes. And they said they could forgive up to 40% of the loan.
40,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
I thought it was
That's-
20, yeah. So there is that possibility too.
so I am talking to Greg Devine tomorrow or Thursday at 10 o'clock to try to nail that down.
The other thing is this, as you said, this is a national problem and the states are gonna have to deal with it. And there's lawsuits out there. And so I know we're not gonna talk about this next time, but putting in the operating budget really, I think, has to be delayed to make that decision because we just don't know how this is gonna be, what we're gonna have available to us to manage this in the future.
Right. And I'm not asking for you to make a decision tonight. I'm just asking for you to think about it at your next meeting or on the 4th, when we come back together. You know, an article might be the way to go. So it certainly sounds like it.
Oh, real quick question. What's POET stand for? I forgot. I used to know.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
The filter.
Don't worry, I'll find it.
Filter.
No worry. Yeah, filters, right. Maybe I'll pull that in the minutes. Filters. Very good.
Susie?
Aaron Saunders will be in Shutesbury next Monday at 1 o'clock. We have pressed him and he did respond when the DEP said this has to be dealt with immediately. He
Mhm.
did help find the way to the Clean Water Trust Emergency Fund. We need to keep pushing him on this, and you know, I put out a letter to Governor Healy. We need to continue to push her. And we should probably be sending this as a letter to Markey, Warren, and
McGovern.
What about Comerford
Tim
too?
McGovern.
Yeah. So when is he here, Susie?
He's on
Monday.
whatever Monday that is.
Yeah, it's just next Monday, the 11th.
First Monday of, no.
No,
Second
it's the
Monday of the
13th.
month. Second Monday of the month at 1 o'clock.
February 10th. Okay, I will
No,
not be able,
no,
Well,
he'll
also
be here the
January 13th.
13th. He'll
the
be here the
13th.
January
Okay.
13th.
So can one of you maybe meet with him? I cannot.
George and I often meet with him. I will
Okay.
definitely be able to be there.
That would be
I
awesome.
think I'm gonna be there too.
Okay, I think it's important. Okay. So the next thing is the administrative assistant. We are changing that to a 32-hour-a-week job. So in your budget, under select board secretary, we're asking for $41,600 in the budget, and right now it's at $29,564.
Sorry, what was the proposed amount?
The proposed amount is $41,600.
And it's
So-
my oh, I'm sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
So this is a proposal. I'm just giving you the number to plug in. The town is not staffed very well during the day. And we are not, you have had 2 or 3 people now working here since Linda Scott is gone. You guys had a jewel in Linda Scott. Jewels don't come along very often.
Yeah.
And so we really, to make this job where people are hired and stay and not constantly changing, to have staff here from 8:30 to 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, so that you have somebody in this building to sell your trash bags. I have chased people down the street. I have delivered trash transfer station tickets to homes. That's not the way to run a professional office. And I think that is what Becky did. She was so good at trying to help everyone that it overextended her. And we really need a consistent person and a consistent hour, a consistent time in this town hall where people know they can come in and get help. I can't tell you how many times in the 4 or 5 weeks I've been here, people are just standing out there in the hall not knowing who to talk to or where to go or where to buy trash bags or where to get because our hours are just all over the place. So to solve that problem, we've gone to the personnel board, we've rewritten the administrative secretary's job description. We're trying to streamline bill paying because a lot of bills weren't paid. There's a huge change going on in that specific office to try and service your residents better and support your town administrator the way they need to be supported. So those are the 2 key things. Support your town administrator, support the website so that stuff goes up on the website, calendars go up on the website, all of that. Without having that person in that other office, that is so limiting in what your TA can do. I spent a whole week and a half doing admin secretary stuff and not concentrating on what I needed to do just to keep things running. And so we need to pay well, and we're talking about paying $25 an hour, 32 hours a week. So nobody's staffing on Friday, Monday through Thursday, 8 hours a day, so that somebody is here to meet the public, to run the bills, to put stuff up on the website, to do the select board agenda on time. There's just a whole multitude of things, support things that need to be done. And unfortunately, we need to pay a decent wage to get somebody to stay. We did interview one of our previous employees who went to another town because the dollar amount just isn't good. I mean, people can't make a wage. We all have run into wage issues everywhere. So that's where the change is, 32 hours, $25 an hour. So it's $41,600, which is an increase of $12,036. It is not an increase in health insurance or Medicare because that was already built in. That job was already a 28-hour-a-week job. It already had the benefits. So you're not paying extra for that. You're actually getting more for your money by going to 32 hours because you're still paying the same dollar amount for all your benefits. You are. None of that has changed. So so that's what they're asking for. And you may not be able to do it. I don't know, but we are asking that you put that 41,600 in the admin secretary budget. If you're talking about like the open checkbook only being $5,200 and that sounds reasonable, then I want you to consider that $10,000 to service your community on a consistent, solid basis and to support your TA the way she should be supported
Mhm.
$10,000 is not much money in the whole scheme of things. So that's the biggest proposal we're bringing to you. Everything else we're going to do is going to be steady, but the big change is that change there. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Any questions?
Bob?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the fire station. Was there anything happening there?
What do you mean by the fire
Well,
station?
there was a pollution issue there, and we had an order from the state to address it, and I'm not sure, I haven't had an update, at least that I can recall, on that subject for quite some time. But there was an expense. We had some pollution that was detected in the wells. Is that something that's been solved? And it's
That is not something I'm aware of, Bob, to be
Okay.
honest with you. My whole focus has been on the PFAS, so maybe you and I can meet and try to go through what that is.
I'll look up in the minutes and see if I can locate it. I don't know if anybody else remembers it, but I think it was a hot item on our agenda last year, in 24.
Last year. I know there was a gas issue at one point. I
Mhm.
don't know how that got resolved. So,
We had all thought it was resolved, and then it reemerged as an issue
okay,
because they have test wells there that have to be
okay,
monitored, so.
right. So it may be something my time can't handle right now. Because I am where I am.
Yeah, I just thought you might know something about it, but it might be an
Yeah.
expense for us to have to handle, so.
Yeah,
we
I
should
will
look
make,
into it.
I'll make note of it. So the last thing I have is the,
Before you get to that, Gabe,
Yep.
I just see April's had her hand up.
sure,
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify around the new position. It's going from administrative secretary to administrative assistant. So
Yes.
it's real, that's really giving it more gusto.
yes, because
Yes.
we are,
It's not not a town administrator, it's not an assistant town administrator, but it's a step up from a secretary,
What's the
Right.
new title again?
administrative assistant.
Okay,
So, yeah.
thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you for that, because I know I get caught up in my spiel. I do. Yes, we are trying to beef it up so that that position has set responsibilities to support the town administrator. Bill running, reappointments, all the major things, some confidential things, taking over the PFAS, making sure the PFAS reporting gets out on a timely manner. A lot of important tasks that need to be distributed so you don't overwork your next TA.
Okay. What else, Gabe?
Okay, so the last thing is a question from the highway boss to you folks. So his tree warden budget, and we've had a lot of windstorms and a lot of trees come down. So his tree warden budget is expended, it's like at 85%. He's got $779 left for the year, and it's only half year point. His question to you folks is, should he stop cutting trees and doing the work that he wants to do? Or will you support him by giving him some more money? If so, should he give you a number that he needs? What's your take on that? Because right now we've stopped except for emergency trees, but he's got a tree plan that needs to be worked on.
Yeah. That's years.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
years.
I think he should make an informed estimate of what he thinks is going to be required.
Okay.
For
And
the
then I'll
rest.
come back to you. Do you consider that a reserve fund or do you consider that?
Yeah, that I think we would handle that via FinCom reserve transfer.
Okay.
Does anybody have a different view? Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to point out that Nelson Tree is taking down a phenomenal number of trees along at least where the three-phase lines are. I mean, which means our highway boss doesn't have to worry about the Leverett Shutesbury Road, Locks Pond Road, or Wendell Road, because an unbelievable amount of stuff is coming down. Trees are marked up and down the road, so at least that should take some of the pressure off.
Yeah, and I know the power company is doing some as well.
Yeah, yeah, Nelson is being paid by the power company, by National Grid. But they're
So-
doing quite the job. I've been talking to them all the time to see what they're doing and how they're progressing.
Great to hear. So what I should ask him after you telling me that is what specifically is he going to do? What area
Yeah.
and what dollar amount?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. We want to
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then I think what we could do is we could discuss and vote on a FinCom reserve transfer at our next meeting. If he's
Okay.
able to get you that info.
okay.
But I don't think, and I saw a lot of heads shaking. No, I don't think the message should be stop doing work. Yeah.
Not
Okay.
Shutesbury.
Okay, well, we did stop because we only had $700 left, so and I'm not sure what road he was on when he came to me, and I said, I just don't, Gail told me that she won't pay if there's no money in the accounts. So I don't want to get in the position where we have a bill and no funding without talking to you first. I'm trying to be proactive and not reactive. So, okay, that was it for me.
Susie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I want people to remember that when we had the former tree warden, he did not cut down trees.
Yep.
So yeah, this
For
is
years.
backlog of work and it's time to do it. And the other piece is that even though the state, we give it a lot of crap, they did come through with 109,000 for the highway department, where they talked about boosting the, doing a boost on the chapter 90, and that came through and it's 109. I'm sure that's a drop in the bucket in the long run, but we can say, thank you, state, for coming through on that one.
Can I ask some questions to Gabe?
Yeah, please go ahead, George.
So Gabe, a couple things. So you're doing okay with the budget in terms of you have everything you need. I know you need to do a lot of legwork, but I had sent you a list.
Yep.
Everything seemed to make sense to you.
So to be honest, George, I had to put that on the back burner until this week. So we printed out Monday, I have to remember what day I'm in, all the budgets that I had been sent to start entering them into the sheet. I just had to get through the PFAS problem that I had.
Sure, understood. I just want to make sure, I'm not asking you to have you started it. I just want to make sure you feel comfortable with what you have and you feel like you have
Yep.
access to everything you
I-
need.
I do. I really thank you for sending me this stuff. And once I get going on what I start plugging in, I'll holler if I am needing anything.
Please, if I can help in any way, you let me know.
Okay, that would be great.
And another thing I wanted to ask you is, we get on an annual basis, the personnel board, when I was on the personnel board, we were receiving the FERCog wage and salary survey. You're probably familiar with that.
Yeah, you just have to go online and get it.
Yeah, I'm willing to get it myself if you can provide me the information. I'm just curious if it's even available yet for FY25.
I don't think it is. We haven't done it yet for
It's a bit
25.
early, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so 24, I think, is up there because I've looked at it. Because we'll need to use it during the police negotiations and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, we have that. I definitely have that.
Okay. so
And I
you have-
usually get it in the winter, and that's why I'm asking when you do come across it, if you would forward it to the personnel board and me as well.
Sure.
We rely on it for a few things.
Yeah, I understand. That's good. Okay.
It's a great resource.
It is. I use it all the time. Yep. Okay.
And I guess is it the wrong time to ask about the town administrator search? How's that going?
So it's not the wrong time. We have 7 applicants currently. None of them are previous TAs, except for maybe one. So we're gonna start, the committee has been appointed and is gonna start, we're sending out a doodle poll tomorrow to pick a date to have the first meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Looking at the time, I think we should probably wrap up our meeting. I think the only thing on my list that we didn't get to was reviewing minutes. I think we can do that next time. I also wanted to see if there was any Four Towns debrief that, or any comments, but again, I think we can handle that for our next meeting. Bye, Gabe. Thanks for all.